It started like any other birthday celebration in Mrs. Kelly's third grade classroom. Streamers on the whiteboard, cupcakes lined up in neat little rows, a big, round cake at the center of the table, covered in blue and green frosting with plastic dinosaurs roaring across the top. But the dog knew. Before the candles were even lit, Ranger, the school's K9, let out a low, guttural growl from across the room. Then he lunged. He wasn't just barking, he was warning. And if they hadn't listened, if they had just brushed it off as weird dog behavior like people tend to do, someone might not have gone home that day. It was supposed to be a good day for Aiden Carter, his first birthday at his new school in upstate New York. After a rocky year of moving around, he was quiet, shy, a bit too observant for a 9-year-old, but he always smiled politely and said, "Yes, ma'am," even when he was clearly nervous. Mrs. Kelly, who had been teaching third grade for over 15 years, made sure birthdays in her classroom were special. The students all got a banner, a birthday pencil, and if their parents brought in a cake or cupcakes, they got to sing as a class. Aiden's cake had arrived around 10 a.m. hand-delivered by Uncle Tony, a man with a sun-faded Yankees cap and sunglasses he didn't remove inside. He didn't say much, just smiled a little too wide, handed over the cake, and left quickly. Nobody thought anything of it, but Ranger did. Ranger was a 6-year-old German shepherd, certified in narcotics and weapons detection. Officer Lisa Brennan, his handler, had been with him since his first year on the force. Together, they had transitioned into a school safety team after an incident a year before it had prompted the district to place K-9 units in all its elementary schools. Ranger had never acted out, never barked without cause, never growled at a student, a visitor, or even a janitor. But today, the moment the cake entered the room, he wouldn't stop staring. "Lisa, your dog's acting funny," Mrs. Kelly had joked, adjusting the party hats. Lisa was already moving. Ranger was standing stiff, tail high, nose twitching. He wasn't looking at the kids. He was locked on that cake. "I think we need to check this out," Lisa said, stepping forward. "A birthday cake?" One of the aides laughed. "Maybe he's just hungry." But Lisa's gut said otherwise. And when Ranger began barking, full-throated, teeth bared wide, the room went silent. Aiden backed away from the table, eyes wide, not scared of the dog, but something else, like he'd seen this moment coming. Mrs. Kelly gently guided the children to the reading corner. Lisa approached the cake. "Ranger, sit." He didn't. He never disobeyed that command. Lisa's voice lowered. "Everyone clear the room." Mrs. Kelly hesitated. "Lisa, now they did." The aides ushered the kids into the hallway one by one, except Aiden. He didn't move. "Aiden," Mrs. Kelly said softly. "Sweetheart, my uncle said not to eat it." The boy said, barely above a whisper. He said, "Just pretend it was from him." Lisa's heart sank. She got on one knee beside him. Did he say why? Aiden shook his head. "He told me if I said anything, he'd make Mom disappear again." Again, Lisa's grip tightened on the radio at her belt. If stories like this move you, and if you believe animals like Ranger are more than heroes in their family, consider subscribing to our channel, Heroes for Animals. We tell true and inspired stories about the dogs who save lives, speak the unspoken, and protect the people who need it most. Now back to Ranger. Bomb squad, police backup, news vans by lunchtime. The school went into lockdown, but nobody panicked because Lisa kept it quiet, calm, controlled. Ranger stayed by her side, eyes never leaving the cake box. The team used a portable X-ray scanner. At first glance, it looked like thick layers of frosting, cake, and some hollow air pockets until they got to the base, wrapped in a layer of plastic. Inside a metal food-safe container was a small, loaded handgun taped inside the cake, ready to be accessed. Who the hell put the gun in a kid's birthday cake? One officer whispered under his breath. Someone who wanted it inside the building. Someone who knew it wouldn't get past a metal detector unless it was cleverly concealed. The man who delivered it, Uncle Tony, wasn't Aiden's uncle at all. He was Anthony Vega, a convicted felon with priors for trafficking, illegal possession, and a pending charge for obstruction of justice. Aiden's mother, missing for almost a year, had been a witness in a case involving Vega's operations. He hadn't just been trying to deliver a message. He had planned to pick up that cake later and use it on someone on the school on Aiden. Aiden was placed into protective custody that evening. Lisa stayed with him at the hospital, where a child trauma specialist met with him gently, bringing Ranger and helped. He didn't smile, not right away. But when Ranger laid his head in the boy's lap, Aiden whispered something no one expected. I knew he'd save me. I just didn't know if he'd be in time. Lisa asked him what he meant. Aiden looked up, eyes sad but steady. My mom told me to trust good dogs. She said, if anything ever happened, find one. They don't lie. That night, after the chaos quieted and the school was declared safe, Lisa sat with Ranger in the squad car outside the empty campus. She scratched behind his ears. You never bark without a reason, she whispered, and you always know more than the rest of us. Ranger rested his head on her lap and closed his eyes. Job done for today. Officer Lisa Brennan had been in law enforcement long enough to know when something didn't sit right, and this didn't sit right. Yes, they had stopped a weapon from entering an elementary school. Yes, the man who tried to sneak it in was in custody. And yes, Ranger had saved lives, but Lisa couldn't stop thinking about the boy. 9-year-old Aiden Carter had sat on that hospital bed, too still, too quiet for a kid who had nearly been used as bait. There was something behind his big brown eyes, something heavy, something he'd carried far too long for someone that small. She saw it all the time in kids who came from chaos. Children who'd learned to read Danger the way other kids read comic books. And now she knew why. The next day, Lisa sat with child services at the police station. Aiden was in temporary protective custody, staying with a certified foster home in the county. He's not talking much, the caseworker said. Just keeps petting his stuffed dog and asking when he can see the real one. Lisa smiled a little. Ranger's already waiting in the car. The caseworker raised an eyebrow. You're bringing the dog? Lisa nodded. Ranger's the only one he fully trusts right now. Let's use that. When Lisa arrived at the foster home later that day, Aiden was sitting on the front steps, holding a peanut butter sandwich and staring at the mailbox like it held answers. The moment he saw Ranger, he jumped up. Ranger. The German shepherd trotted up, tail wagging, body calm and steady. His working stance softened into affection. He leaned gently into Aiden's legs as the boy dropped to his knees and wrapped his arms around the dog's neck. Lisa waited until the reunion calmed, then sat beside him on the porch. You hungry? She asked. He shook his head. I'm always hungry. Doesn't mean I want to eat. She nodded. Silence settled between them for a minute. Then Aiden said quietly, they said the cake was dangerous. It was, Lisa replied. You helped us stop something really bad, Aiden. I didn't do anything, he mumbled. Ranger did. Lisa smiled again. Maybe, but you didn't cut that cake. You didn't stay quiet when it mattered. Aiden looked down. Can I ask you something? Lisa continued. The man who brought the cake, Anthony Vega. You called him your uncle, but he's not. No, Aiden said flatly. Do you know where your mom is, Aiden? He hesitated. Then he nodded. Later that afternoon, Lisa sat across from Captain Ruiz and a federal marshal. We have a name, she said. Amanda Carter, Aiden's mother. She's been missing almost 11 months. Ruiz leaned back in his chair. We assumed she disappeared voluntarily. She was set to testify against Vega and then vanished. Witness protection failed. Nothing showed up since. She didn't run, Lisa said. She was hiding. Aiden says she's in a safe house in upstate Vermont. Left him with Vega under duress. He told you that directly? Lisa shook her head. He told Ranger. I was just lucky enough to be in the room. The marshal chuckled. That dog's good. He's more than good, Lisa said. He's the reason this kid is still alive. 2 days later, a federal team quietly extracted Amanda Carter from a remote cabin near Montpelier. She had been living under an alias with no phone, no internet, and minimal contact with the outside world. She cried the moment she saw Lisa and whispered, Is he okay? Aiden was brought to her later that afternoon. The moment they saw each other, the room melted. Every wall Aiden had built came crashing down as he sprinted into her arms. "I missed you so much," he sobbed. "I missed you more," she said through tears. "I wanted to come back. I just didn't know if it was safe." Ranger sat near the doorway, quietly watching the moment unfold. Amanda reached out and gently patted his head. "I owe you more than I can say." Back at the precinct, Lisa reviewed the case file again. Anthony Vega hadn't just been trying to scare Amanda. He was part of a broader network that used kids and families as pawns. The gun inside the cake had been meant for leverage, possibly even to coerce Amanda back out into the open, knowing she'd hear about it, see the news, and come running. He hadn't expected Ranger. A week passed. Amanda and Aiden were placed into full federal protection. This time with tighter security, no back doors, and a promise from the marshals that they'd be watched day and night until the trial. But before they left town, Amanda asked for one last meeting. Lisa brought Ranger, of course. At a quiet park near the courthouse, Amanda bent down and looked Ranger in the eyes. "I don't know how to say thank you in a way you'll understand," she said softly. "But you saved my son. You saved me. And even if the world forgets what you did, I never will." Ranger simply sat, tongue out, eyes bright and calm. He didn't need her words. He already knew. That evening, Lisa drove home with Ranger in the passenger seat, head out the window, ears flapping in the spring breeze. "You're something else, you know that?" she said, smiling to herself. Ranger turned and let out a low huff. Lisa looked ahead, the town passing by in blurs of light and green. "We get into this job thinking it's about the badge," she said. "But the best work we ever do, no one sees it. And that was okay, because sometimes saving one kid is more than enough." The courthouse was quiet that morning. Outside, the birds were chirping, spring breeze curling through the old trees lining Main Street. Inside, the marble halls echoed with the low murmur of lawyers and court officers shuffling case files. But in the waiting room just outside courtroom 2B, Lisa Brennan wasn't listening to any of that. She was watching Ranger, the German shepherd, who had sat quietly for most of the morning, lie beside her feet as the trial prepped to begin, but now his ears were forward, body rigid, and his nose was pointed toward the hallway. "What is it, boy?" Lisa asked under her breath. Ranger growled low. Not a bark, not panic, just a warning. Lisa's hand dropped instinctively to her sidearm, eyes scanning the corridor. That sound she knew too well. Something or someone was off. Inside the courtroom, Amanda Carter sat on the witness stand, preparing to give testimony that would send Anthony Vega away for a very long time. Aiden wasn't there. He was staying in a safe house with 2 marshals and caseworker, surrounded by quiet woods and guard dogs. Amanda had insisted he be kept out of court. Lisa had agreed. Amanda's hands trembled slightly as she gripped the sides of the wooden chair. "I just want this to be over," she told Lisa earlier. "I want to be able to walk down a sidewalk and not look over my shoulder." Lisa had nodded. "Then let's get you there." But outside the courtroom, Ranger's growl told a different story. It wasn't over. Not yet. They came in dressed like delivery drivers. 2 men, one with a clipboard, the other wheeling a covered cart that looked like it carried food trays. Security at the front desk had barely blinked. After all, the courthouse ordered in lunch every day for jurors, but Lisa was already moving. Ranger's leash tightened as she walked him toward the side hallway. When the 2 men turned the corner, they froze, and so did she. "Where's this going?" Lisa asked, voice flat but steady. One of the men smiled too quickly. "Judge's chambers, lunch drop." "Funny," Lisa said. "Judge Thornton's not in today." The second man turned to bolt. Ranger didn't wait. He lunged with terrifying precision. The dog clamped onto the man's arm, dragging him down hard as the other tried to run. Lisa shouted, drew her weapon, and ordered him to the floor. It was over in seconds. Both men in cuffs. The cart was searched. No food trays, just camera equipment and a black duffel bag that contained handcuffs, zip ties, and a stolen court security badge. They weren't there for lunch. They were there for Amanda. Back inside, the courtroom was evacuated. Amanda was rushed through a secure hallway, flanked by agents. Lisa followed behind, Ranger trotting by her side, eyes scanning every shadow. Amanda was pale, shaking. They found me again. How? Lisa didn't answer right away. She didn't have to. They both knew Anthony Vega was in a cell, but his people weren't. That night, Lisa sat at her kitchen table, staring at the file she had pulled from her cruiser. It wasn't just Vega. He was part of something larger, something well-funded and patient. Human trafficking, smuggling, identity theft. And when anyone on the inside flipped or tried to get out, the rest of the network responded fast and without mercy. Amanda had been marked from the moment she disappeared. Now they were trying to silence her permanently. The next morning, Aiden's safe house was moved. Lisa insisted on being part of the transfer. She drove the lead vehicle. Ranger rode in the back beside Aiden, who wore a hoodie zipped to his chin and held tightly onto Ranger's vest like it was a lifeline. Are they coming back? Aiden asked softly. Lisa glanced at him through the rear view mirror. They always try, but we're ready for them. Aiden didn't reply. He just looked down and whispered, I dreamed about the cake again. This time it opened by itself. Lisa didn't know how to answer that. So Ranger did. The dog shifted his weight and leaned against Aiden's leg. A soft comfort, an unspoken promise. You're not alone. The new safe house was tucked into the edge of a national forest. One way in, one way out. Secure perimeter, full surveillance. Still, Lisa didn't trust it. She stayed that night, sleeping on the couch with one hand on her holster and the other holding Ranger's leash. At 2:13 a.m., the motion lights outside flickered. Then the power cut. Ranger was up in a flash, growling, head low, turned toward the rear door. Lisa slid on her vest and drew her weapon. 3 shadows moved across the yard. She whispered, back door, same setup, zip ties. Ranger barked once. Sharp, aggressive. The house lit up red with emergency lights. Aiden screamed. Amanda called out from the other room. Gunshots cracked in the dark. When it was over, 2 men lay cuffed on the ground. The third was still running, bleeding from a leg wound Ranger had given him during the scuffle. He wouldn't make it far. The marshals were already chasing. Lisa sat with Amanda and Aiden on the floor as sunrise filtered through the broken window. You save us again, Amanda whispered to Ranger. He didn't respond. He just lay at their feet, chest rising and falling, watching the doorway, still ready. Later that day, the feds relocated them to a permanent facility, somewhere no one but a small handful of people would ever know. Amanda testified 2 days later via secure video link. Her words were clear, her face calm, and the jury believed every word. Anthony Vega was convicted on multiple counts: racketeering, weapons trafficking, attempted murder, child endangerment. He'd never see daylight again. But Lisa wasn't celebrating. Not yet, because there was one more name in the file Vega had carried, one more lead, and it was local. That night, Ranger lay in the passenger seat of the cruiser as Lisa watched the lights of the town roll by. He was tired. So was she. But they had one more stop to make. Because sometimes it's not about the cake or the gun or the man in cuffs. It's about the boy still afraid to sleep, the mother who hasn't exhaled in months, and the dog who refused to be ignored. Lisa Brennan had learned a long time ago that betrayal rarely comes from strangers. It comes from someone who knew just enough about the protocols, just enough about the safe houses, just enough to look you in the eye and shake your hand while plotting behind your back. She didn't say that out loud, but Ranger seemed to sense it. After the attempted breach at the safe house, Lisa had requested access to the full investigative file on Anthony Vega's network. The digital record was massive. Thousands of entries, aliases, assets, shell companies, and payment trails. But one name stood out: Ryan Cole. Ryan was a mid-level intelligence officer assigned to a regional anti-trafficking task force. Lisa had worked with him once, maybe twice. He had that clean-cut, just out of the academy look, always courteous, always agreeable, too agreeable. He was also the one who signed off on the location of the Vermont safe house, the one that was breached. Lisa didn't believe in coincidences anymore. She met with Captain Ruiz the next morning. He frowned as she dropped the file on his desk. Cole? No way. He's green, sure, but not dirty. Lisa folded her arms. He accessed Vega's data 2 days before the cake incident. His badge ID was used to pull court transport schedules and witness relocation details. Ruiz scratched his chin. Could have been hacked. Then why is he not answering his phone or showing up to work? Ruiz went silent. I want a bolo issued, Lisa said, and I want to be the one who brings him in. Ruiz nodded. That afternoon, Lisa and Ranger were on the road again. She had tracked Cole's car to a property 2 counties over, an old hunting cabin near the state line. It wasn't listed in his name, but his cell had pinged nearby just once, just long enough to raise flags. She parked a half-mile out and approached on foot. Ranger moved ahead of her, ears forward, tail low, his working posture. When they reached the tree line, Lisa spotted the cabin. It looked abandoned, but there was smoke coming from the chimney. She gave the signal. Ranger advanced. Inside, Ryan Cole sat at a battered kitchen table, staring into a lukewarm cup of coffee. He didn't flinch when Lisa kicked the door open. Didn't reach for a weapon. He just raised his hand and said, I figured you'd come. Lisa kept her gun trained on him. On your knees, hand behind your head. Cole complied. You don't understand, he started. Oh, I understand, Lisa said sharply. You sold out a mother and her child to a trafficking ring. You handed over safe house info that got people nearly killed. It wasn't like that, he snapped. You think this is black and white? I didn't have a choice. You had a badge. That's the only choice that mattered. Ranger growled low, standing between them. Lisa cuffed him and read his rights. She didn't say another word on the way back. Later, in the interview room, Cole talked not out of remorse, but because he knew he was out of options. They paid me, he said, voice flat. Not in cash, not directly. My sister, she needed a medical procedure. They knew that, covered the bill, then came asking for favors. At first, it was just basic intel. Then it got deeper. How deep? Lisa asked. They wanted Carter's schedule, the kids routined in the safe house. I didn't want anyone to get hurt. I didn't know they'd bring a weapon to a school. You didn't care, Lisa said. That's what this really is. You stopped caring the second it got messy. Cole looked down. For once, he didn't argue. Amanda Carter was moved again. This time, off the grid completely. The U.S. Marshals offered Lisa the chance to say goodbye, but Amanda declined. It's better if we disappear, she told the agent on the phone. Tell Lisa and Ranger thank you for everything, but I want Aiden to grow up without looking over his shoulder. Lisa understood, and yet she felt a hollowness settle in her chest. There would be no reunion, no final hug, just silence, the kind that felt too permanent. That weekend, Lisa took Ranger to the lake trail outside town. It was their quiet place, away from headlines, away from courtrooms and cages and people who lied with smooth voices. As they walked, she threw a stick, and for once, Ranger actually chased it like a normal dog. No vest, no leash, just a shepherd being a dog again. When he returned, tail wagging, Lisa knelt beside him and whispered, You saved more than a life, you know. Ranger tilted his head, ears perked. You gave a kid his mother back. That's not something people forget. Ranger didn't bark. He didn't need to. He had done what needed to be done. Just like always, Lisa returned to her squad car an hour later to find a sealed envelope taped to her windshield. No return address. Inside was a photo of Aiden holding a drawing of Ranger and a handwritten message in a child's scrawl. Tell him I still remember. Tell him I still feel safe. Lisa smiled. She tucked the photo into her dashboard, turned the key in the ignition, and drove forward quietly, steadily, knowing the job wasn't over. But for now, the mission was complete. Not every hero wears a uniform. Some have 4 legs, sharp instincts, and the ability to see the truth long before we do. Ranger didn't just stop a disaster. He reminded everyone around him to pay attention to what's unspoken, to what's felt, and to what's quietly wrong. So maybe it's worth asking, when was the last time you trusted your instincts, even when no one else did? It had been 11 months since the cake, Since Ranger stopped a hidden weapon from entering an elementary school, since Aiden and his mother disappeared into witness protection, and Officer Lisa Brennan helped dismantle a trafficking ring that had infected their town like a quiet cancer. Lisa had moved on to other cases. Ranger was still her partner, riding every shift beside her. But there were days, quiet ones, where she found herself wondering about Aiden, whether he ever slept through the night, whether he still held on to that stuffed animal Ranger had nudged into his lap. She didn't expect a call. That brought it all back. Dispatch buzzed into her cruiser at 7:43 a.m. Unit 212. Report to Greenwood Trailer Park, Lot 18. Welfare check requested by Child Protective Services. Possible minor at risk. Lisa clicked the mic. 212 en route. It sounded routine. A neighbor complaint. Maybe a kid not showing up to school. Lisa had seen it before. She didn't expect Ranger to stand up in the passenger seat halfway there. Ears perked, eyes focused. "You sense something?" she asked. He didn't bark, just stared ahead, silent. That was enough for Lisa. She flipped on her lights and accelerated. The trailer was barely standing. Peeling siding. A screen door hanging off one hinge. Garbage bags piled beside the porch. A faded pink tricycle lay on its side in the yard, half swallowed by weeds. Lisa stepped out slowly, Ranger at her side. The CPS worker was already waiting at the foot of the porch. Mid-30s, hair in a bun, clipboard hugged tightly to her chest. "Name's Jen," she said. "We got a tip from an anonymous source. Said a child was living here without a guardian, possibly a runaway or abducted minor. I knocked twice, but no answer." Lisa nodded. "Let's be careful." She motioned Ranger forward. The dog sniffed the air, then moved deliberately up the porch steps. No barking, no growling. Just that alert posture Lisa had learned to trust more than any gut feeling. He stopped at the door and sat, waiting, listening. Lisa knocked firmly. "This is Officer Brennan with local police. We're here to check on your safety. If anyone's inside, please come to the door." Nothing. She tried again, still silence. Then, barely a whisper behind the door, a child's voice. "Are you the one with the dog?" Lisa crouched low. "Yes, his name's Ranger. He's safe. So am I. Are you okay?" Pause. Then the door unlocked. Slowly, it creaked open. And standing there was a girl, maybe 8 or 9, hair tangled, oversized hoodie, bruises on her knees. But her eyes were sharp, alert, like someone who'd learned a long time ago that most adults couldn't be trusted. Ranger stepped forward and gently nudged her hand with his nose. She didn't flinch. She knelt and hugged him like she'd known him her whole life. Her name was Marley, and no one knew she existed. No school records, no birth certificate on file, no recent medical visits. Just an old photo from a missing child flyer 3 states over, where she'd vanished from a shelter 2 years ago. She had been moved from place to place by people who promised safety and new homes. But what Marley learned instead was silence and how to survive it. She wouldn't talk to the CPS worker, barely looked at the officers who arrived after. But she talked to Lisa, and she trusted Ranger. Later that evening at the station, Lisa sat beside Marley on a bench. "Want something to eat?" she asked. Marley shook her head. Lisa pulled a granola bar from her pocket and set it on the bench. "Anyway, you don't have to say anything," she said. "But I want you to know this place, this station, you're safe here. No one's going to hurt you." Marley finally looked up. "They said that before." "I know," Lisa said quietly. "They said it to Aiden, too." Marley blinked. "Who's that?" "Someone like you. Someone who knew how to keep quiet, because no one listened until a dog did." Marley slowly reached over and opened the granola bar. She didn't smile, but she didn't look away again either. Lisa worked the phones at night, called shelters, cross-reference flyers, dug into archive case files from out of state. By midnight, they confirmed the match. Marley Ray Winters, missing since age 7, last seen in Baton Rouge. Case classified as inactive, but here she was, alive, breathing, and holding on to a K9 dog like her life depended on it. Lisa stood at her desk, staring down at the file. The pattern was repeating. Different child. Same silence. Same fear. Same network. The next morning, Marley spoke. Not to the therapist, not to the social worker, to Ranger. Lisa watched through the observation window as Marley whispered into the dog's ear, like he could carry her words somewhere safe. Later, Lisa sat beside her again. Can I tell you a secret? Marley asked. Of course. My mom's still alive. Lisa blinked. What? She's not dead. They told me she was. But I heard one of them on the phone say she was in hiding. Do you know her name? Marley nodded. Grace. Grace Winters. Lisa jotted it down immediately. Do you know where she is? Marley hesitated. No, but I think she's looking for me. By noon, Lisa had a task force digging into every trace of Grace Winters. And by evening, they found something. A woman using that name had filed a police report 3 years ago, just after Marley went missing, but under a different name. Said she believed her daughter had been taken by someone from inside the child welfare system. She claimed her parental rights had been fraudulently terminated. She was dismissed as unstable, labeled unfit, and disappeared shortly after. Lisa sat back in her chair, heart pounding. They were doing it again. Later that night, Lisa took Ranger to Marley's temporary shelter. She knocked on the door gently. Marley opened it and smiled. A real one this time. You brought him back, she said. Of course, Lisa replied. He's been waiting to see you. Marley knelt and hugged Ranger again. And for a moment, everything stilled. Just a girl, a dog, and the quiet between them. It was a Tuesday when they found her. A woman matching the description of Grace Winters had been spotted in a rural clinic outside Roanoke, Virginia. She had come in with a fractured wrist, no insurance, and no identification. When the nurse asked her name, she gave a false one, but when shown a photo of Marley, her daughter, now safe and being cared for across state lines, she burst into tears. The nurse knew something wasn't right. She made the call. By the time Lisa arrived at the clinic, Ranger by her side, Grace was sitting in a quiet room with a blanket over her shoulders and fear in her eyes. Not the fear of being caught, but the fear of being believed. Lisa sat down across from her. You're not in trouble, she said. We've been looking for you. Marley's alive. She's safe. Grace's hand flew to her mouth, eyes welling. Does she remember me? She does, Lisa said. And she never stopped hoping you were out there. The woman broke. No defenses, no denial. Just a mother who had been trying to find her daughter in a system designed to keep them apart. Back at the shelter, Marley was sitting at the table, drawing, half a page filled with uneven lines and soft colors. When Lisa stepped inside, the girl looked up. Ranger trotted in first, then Grace. At first, Marley didn't move. She stared at her mother like she was watching a dream cross the threshold. Then, slowly, she stood and ran. There were no big words, no speeches, just a hug that didn't let go. Lisa turned away to give them privacy, her hand resting gently on Ranger's neck. He didn't move, just watched, calm and proud. Over the following weeks, things moved quickly. DNA confirmed the match. Court documents that had once stripped Grace of custody were overturned after new evidence showed her signature had been forged and her records manipulated. The agents connected the fraud to the same trafficking network Anthony Vega had once worked for, revealing that what happened to Aiden and Amanda wasn't a one-off. It was part of something far more calculated, more sinister. But now, thanks to Marley's voice and Ranger's instincts, that chain had been broken. A few weeks later, Lisa met Grace and Marley at the courthouse as the judge officially restored custody. Marley clung to her mother's side, holding a stuffed dog under one arm. Lisa recognized it. It had been Aiden's, passed down, now held by another child who'd learned that not all dogs just bark, some speak. Outside the courthouse, as media crews gathered and advocates for child protection reform stepped up to speak, Lisa sat on the steps with Ranger. You're the real headline, she said, rubbing his ears. He rested his chin on her knee. Think we'll ever have a case that doesn't start with your nose? Ranger huffed softly. Lisa smiled. I'll take that as a no. Back at the precinct, Lisa pinned a new photo to the wall above her desk. It was of Marley and Grace, smiling, standing in front of a small white house with a swing on the porch. A handwritten note on the back read, "He didn't just save us. He reminded us we were never forgotten. Thank you, both of you." Next to it, Lisa pinned a photo of Aiden, older now, a year taller, a year freer, holding a sketch of Ranger in front of a tree planted in the dog's honor. Lives saved, not just from danger, but from silence. 1 week later, Lisa and Ranger responded to a call at a school across town. Suspicious person near the parking lot. No threat confirmed, just routine. But as they walked the perimeter, children watched from the windows. Some waved, some pressed their hands to glass. One little girl whispered, "That's the dog who saves people." Lisa glanced down. Ranger looked up, and for a moment, the world felt quiet, right, whole. Sometimes the strongest voices in a room come from those who can't speak. A dog's growl, a child's silence, a mother's tears. The question isn't whether the danger is loud enough to hear, but whether we're listening when it's quiet. Because the truth is, Ranger didn't just stop a gun and a cake. He stopped the system from swallowing 2 children whole. And he did it the only way he knew how, by never ignoring what others dismissed. So, we'll leave you with this. When was the last time you listened to a warning you didn't understand? Would you recognize the truth, even if it came on 4 legs? Thank you for following this journey. If this story moved you, we invite you to subscribe to Heroes or Animals, where the silent loyalty of dogs like Ranger reminds us how much is at stake and how much better the world becomes when we simply pay attention.